Good afternoon, everyone. Today's topic is understanding and critically appraising the literature review. A high-quality review of literature contains the current theoretical and scientific knowledge about a specific topic. The review identifies what is known and unknown about the topic. Reviewing the literature is the first step in implementing evidence-based practice and identify problems. A review of literature is the process of finding relevant research reports, critically appraising the studies, and synthesizing the study result. The written description of the literature that results from the process is also called a review of literature. Okay, let's dive into the literature review in detail. Purpose of the literature review in quantitative research is to direct the planning and execution of a study. The major literature review is performed at the beginning of the research process. A limited review is conducted after the study is completed to identify studies published since the original literature review, especially it has been 1 year or longer since the study began. Quantitative research reports may include citations to relevant sources in all sections of the report. First, researchers include sources in the introduction section to summarize the background and significance of the research problem. The review of literature section may not be labeled, but be integrated into the introduction. The review includes theoretical and research references that document current knowledge about the problem studied. A quantitative study develops its framework section from the theoretical literature and sometimes from research reports, depending on the focus of the study. The method section describes the design, sample, and the process for obtaining the sample, measurement methods, treatment, and data collection process. References may be cited in various parts in the method section as support for the appropriateness of the method used in the study. The results section includes the result of the statistical analysis. Finally, the discussion section provides the comparison of the findings to other studies' findings. In qualitative research reports, the introduction section will be similar to the same section in the quantitative research report because the researchers document the background and significance of the research problem. However, additional review of the literature may not be cited for two reasons. One reason is that qualitative studies are often conducted on topics about which know very little, so little literature is available to review. The other reason is that some qualitative researchers deliberately do not review the literature deeply prior to conducting the study because they do not want their expectations about the topic to bias their data collection, data analysis, and findings. The purpose, extent, and timing of the literature review vary across the different qualitative approaches. First, in phenomenology, the researchers review the literature in the later stage of the analysis and as they interpret the findings in the larger context of theoretical and empirical knowledge. Grounded theory researchers include a minimal review of relevant studies at the beginning of the research process. The information from these studies is not used to direct data collection or theory development for their current study. The review of the literature in ethnographic research is similar to that in quantitative research. The research problem for an ethnography is based on a review of the literature that identifies how little is known about the culture of interest. Researchers using the exploratory descriptive and historical approaches may be conducting the study because they have reviewed the literature and found that little knowledge is available. Let's move on to the sources included in a literature review. A literature is all written sources relevant to the topic you have selected, including articles published in periodicals or journals, internet publications, monographs, encyclopedias, conference papers, theses, dissertations, clinical journals, textbooks, and other books. Websites and reports developed by government agencies and professional organizations are also included. Second, a citation. A citation is the act of quoting a source, paraphrasing contents from a source, using it as an example, or presenting it as the support for position taken. Each citation should have a corresponding reference in the reference list. The reference is the documentation of the origin of the cited quote or paraphrase idea and provides enough information for the reader to locate the original material. I will introduce you the types of publications. The first one is article. An article is a paper about a specific topic and may be published together with other articles on similar themes in journals, encyclopedias, or edited books. As part of an edited book, articles may be called chapters. A periodical, such as a journal, is published over time and is numbered sequentially for the years published. This sequential numbering is seen the year, volume, issue, and page numbering of a journal. A monograph, such as a book on a specific subject, a record of conference proceeding, or a pamphlet, usually is a one-time publication. An encyclopedia is an authoritative compilation of information on alphabetized topics that may provide background information. But it is rarely cited in academic papers and publications. Online encyclopedias, such as Wikipedia, are in an open, editable format, and as a result, the credibility of the information is variable. Using Wikipedia as a professional source is controversial. Wikipedia may provide ideas for other sources that you may want to find, but check with your faculty about whether Wikipedia or any encyclopedia may be cited for course assignments. Major professional organizations may publish papers selected by a review process that were presented at their conference called conference proceedings. A thesis is a report of a research project completed by a postgraduate student as part of the requirement for a master's degree. A dissertation is a report of an extensive, sometimes original, research project that is completed as the final requirement for a doctoral degree. Clinical journals are periodicals that include research reports and non-research articles about practice problems and professional issues. You are familiar with textbooks as a source of information for academic courses. With textbooks and other books, chapters in an edited book might have been written by different people, which are cited differently than the book as a whole. This is important to note when checking citation and writing your own literature reviews. Websites are an easily accessible source of information. However, not all websites are valid and appropriate for citation in a literature review. Websites prepared and sponsored by government agencies and professional organizations are considered appropriate references to cite. References cited in literature reviews contain two main types of content: theoretical and empirical. Theoretical literature includes concept analysis, models, theories, and conceptual frameworks that support a selected research problem and purpose. Empirical literature refers to knowledge derived from research. In other words, the knowledge is based on data from research. Data-based literature consists of research of research and includes published studies, usually in journals, on the internet, or books, and unpublished studies such as master's theses and doctoral dissertations. Most references cited in quality literature reviews are primary sources that are peer-reviewed. A primary source is written by the person who originated or is responsible for generating the ideas published. A research report written by the researchers who conducted the study is a primary source. Secondary sources summarize and quote content from primary sources. Authors of secondary sources paraphrase the works of researchers and present their interpretation of what was written by the primary author. As a result, information in secondary sources may be misinterpretation of the primary author's thoughts. Secondary sources are used only if primary sources cannot be located, or the secondary source provides creative ideas or unique organizations of information not found in a primary source. Quality literature reviews include relevant and current sources. Relevant studies are those with a direct bearing on the problem of concern. Current studies are those published within 5 years before publication of the manuscript. Sources cited should be comprehensive as well as current. Some problems have been studied for decades, and the literature review often includes seminal and landmark studies that were conducted years ago. Seminal studies are the first study on a particular topic, then signal the beginning of a new way of thinking on the topic, and sometimes are referred to as classical studies. Landmark studies are significant research projects that have generated knowledge that influence the discipline and sometimes society as a whole. Replication studies are reproductions or repetition of a study that researchers conduct to determine whether the finding of the original study could be found consistently in different settings and with different subjects. Replication studies are important to build the evidence for practice. A replication study that supports the findings of the original study increases the credibility of the findings and strengthens the evidence for practice. A replication that does not support the original study findings raises questions about the credibility of the findings. Appraising the literature review of a published study involves examining the quality of a content and sources presented. The review provides a basis for the study purpose and may be organized according to the variables in quantitative studies or concepts in qualitative study in the purpose statement. The source cited must be relevant and current for the problem and purpose of the study. Sources should be current, up to the date the paper was accepted for publication. Most articles indicate when they were accepted for publication on the first page of the study. Although the purpose of the literature review for quantitative study is different from the purpose of the literature review for qualitative study, the guidelines for critically appraising the literature review of quantitative and qualitative studies are the same. This is a guideline for literature reviews. It includes 4 questions. These are inclusion of relevant literature, currency of sources, breadth of the review, and synthesis of strengths and weaknesses of available evidence. In the classroom, you can appraise the published article using this guideline. We are going to talk about how to review the literature. Reviewing the literature is a frequent expectation in nursing education programs. You may be overwhelmed and intimidated by this expectation, concerns that can be overcome with information and a checklist of steps to follow in the process. As you can see in this box, there are 4 steps of the literature review. The first step is preparing to review the literature. For this step, you have to clarify the purpose of the literature review and select electronic databases and search terms. The step B is conducting the search. In this step, you have to search the selected databases, use a table to document the result of your search, refine your search, review the abstract to identify relevant studies, obtain full text copies of relevant articles, and ensure that information needed to cite the source is recorded. The step 3 is processing the literature. In this step, you are expected to read the articles and appraise, analyze, and synthesize the literature. The final step is writing the review the literature. In this step, you are going to develop an outline to organize the information from the review, write each section of the review, create the reference list, and check the review and the reference list. Okay, let's go through reviewing literature in detail. The first step is preparing to review the literature. For this step, you have to clarify the purpose of the literature review. Your approach to reviewing the literature will vary according to the purpose of the review. In the first step of the literature review, many students ask, how many articles should I have? How far back in years should I go to find relevant information? The answer to both those questions, it depends. The purpose of the literature review is to identify all studies that included a particular intervention, critically appraise the quality of each study, synthesize all the studies, and draw conclusions about the effectiveness of a particular intervention. When available, replication studies, systematic reviews, meta-analysis, meta-synthesis, and mixed method systematic reviews are important publications to include. It is also important to locate and include previous evidence-based papers that examine the evidence of a particular interventions because the conclusions of these authors are highly relevant. After clarifying the purpose of the literature review, you have to select electronic databases and search terms. Because electronic access to the literature is so readily available, reviewing the literature can be overwhelming. General search engines such as Google, Google Scholar, and Yahoo will identify scholarly publications. But often the sources you identify in this way will be older and not current. To find current literature, learn to use computerized bibliography databases such as CINAHL and Science Direct. You can narrow the number of articles and retrieve fewer by using keywords to search. Keywords are terms that serve as labels for publications on a topic. This table includes electronic databases available for nursing literature reviews. CINAHL, Medline, PubMed, Psyche articles, Academic Search Complete, Health Source, and Psychological and Behavioral Science Collection. You can access all these databases through Seoul National University Medical Library website. In addition to these databases, EMBase and Cochrane Library is also useful for your literature review. The step B is conducting the literature review. For this step, you are going to search the selected databases. To avoid duplicating your work, keep a list of searches that you have completed. This is especially important if you have limited time and will be searching in several short sessions instead of one long one. After searching the selected databases, you are going to use a table or other method to document the result of your search. A very simple way to document your search is to use a table. As you can see in this table, we will record the search terms, years, and the result. With most electronic databases, you can sign up for an account and keep your search history. In addition, reference management software such as RefWorks and EndNote can make tracking the references you have obtained through your searches considerably easier. Then you are going to refine your search. A search may identify thousands of references. Open a few articles that were identified and see what keywords were used. Then reconsider the topic and determine how you can narrow your search. There are several strategies to narrow your search. First one is to decrease the range of years you are searching. Some electronic databases allow you to limit the search to certain type of articles, such as scholarly, peer-reviewed articles. Combining terms or searching for terms only in abstract will decrease the number of articles identified. For undergraduate course assignments, it may be appropriate to limit the search to only full-text articles. This table shows the result of refined searches for patient safety sources. When using the search term patient safety, over 18,000 articles were retrieved. To narrow the search, the term of nurses was added. The result was decreased. When searching the terms only in the abstract, the number of retrieved articles was only 846. Using these strategies, you can decrease your search result. When you decide your final search result, you are going to review the abstract to identify relevant studies. The abstract provides pertinent information about the article. You can easily determine if the article is a research report, description of a clinical problem, or theoretical articles such as a concept analysis. You will identify the articles that seem to be the most relevant to your topic and the purpose of the review. Using the abstract of relevant articles, you will retrieve and save the electronic files of full text articles on your computer to review more thoroughly. You may want to rename the electronic file using a file name that includes the first author's last name and the year, or a file name with a descriptive phrase. It is important to obtain the full text of the article because the abstract does not include the detail needed for literature review. As you retrieve and save the articles, note if the article includes all the information needed for the citation. The purpose for carefully citing sources is that readers can retrieve the reference for themselves, confirm your interpretation of the findings, and gather additional information on the topic. You will need the author's name, year, article title, journal name, journal volume and issue, and page numbers. If a book chapter has been photocopied or retrieved electronically, ensure that the publisher name, location, and year of publication are recorded. If we are using an electronic personal bibliographic software such as RefWorks, the software records the citation information for you. The next step is processing the literature. Processing the literature is among the most difficult phases of the literature review. To process the literature, first you are going to read the articles. When you read the articles, you may be asking yourself, am I expected to read every word of the available sources? The answer is no. Reading every word of every source would result in you being well read and knowledgeable, but with no time left to prepare the course assignment or paper. Also, you can easily forget the focus of the review. So, skim over information provided by the author that is not relevant to your task. Comprehending and critically appraising sources leads to an understanding of the current state of knowledge related to a research problem. Comprehending a source begins by reading and focusing on understanding the main points of the article or other sources. Highlight the content you consider important or make notes in the margins. And record your notes on photocopies or electronic files of articles. After reading the articles, you need to appraise the individual studies critically. The process of appraising individual studies is discussed in Chapter 12. To appraise the article critically, you will identify relevant content in the articles and make a value judgment about their validity or credibility. Analysis requires manipulation of what you are finding, literally making it your own. To help you this process, Cabell et al. Presented a table to organize studies that are reviewed for possible inclusion into a proposal. As you can see in this table, a structured approach to documenting our research strategies for publication include author and country, study design, sample size and site, comments and key findings, and quality appraisals. If using reference management software such as RefWorks and EndNote, it may allow you to generate summary tables from information you record about each study. Other strategy is to classify the sources and arrange them into a graphic or diagrammatic format that requires you to become familiar with key concepts. Pay special attention to conflicting findings because they may provide clues for gaps in knowledge that represent researchable problems. The synthesis of sources involves thinking deeply about what you have found, and identifying the main themes of information that you want to present. Through synthesis, you will cluster and describe connections among what you have found. Let's look at an example for synthesizing. In a study by Brent et al., they describe anxiety can also have a major effect on psychological symptoms and can inhibit learning, concentration, and routine tasks. Keeping anxiety to a minimum is important because if patients are anxious, then they're not able to retain important home care instruction. Brent et al. Synthesized the information from two articles to make a conclusion, and linked the information to the significance of studying anxiety in this population. One strategy for synthesizing is to review the table or mind maps that you have developed and make a list of findings that are similar and those that are different. Another strategy for synthesis is to talk about the articles you have reviewed with another student, nurse, or friend. Verbalizing the characteristics of the studies and explaining them to another person can cause you to think differently about the studies than you do when you are reading your notes. Eventually, we arrive at the final stage. The final stage is to writing the review of the literature. Before beginning to write your review, develop an outline based on your synthesis. When you have read using the section of the review as major headings in the outline. There are four major sections: Introduction, discussion of theoretical literature, discussion of empirical literature, and summary. Under the major headings of the outline, make notes about which sources you want to mention in the different sections of the paper. The introduction will include the focus or purpose of the review and present the organizational structure of the review. A theoretical literature section might include concept analysis, models, theories, or conceptual frameworks relevant to the topic. The empirical section, if it is a separate section, will include the research findings of the articles reviewed. In addition to the synthesis, you want to incorporate the strengths and weaknesses of the overall body of knowledge rather than a detailed presentation and critical appraisal of each study. In the summary section of the outline, make notes of your conclusions. A conclusion is a statement about the state of knowledge in relation to the topic area. In order to write each section of the review, start each paragraph with a theme sentence that describes the main idea of the paragraph. Avoid using direct quotes from an author. Your analysis and synthesis of the sources will allow you to paraphrase the author's ideas. Paraphrasing involves expressing the ideas clearly and in your own words. This is a very important part in this section. After finishing writing the review, you are going to create the reference list. Many journals and academic institutions use the format developed by the APA. The sixth edition of the APA Publication Manual provides revised guidelines for citing electronic sources and direct quotations from electronic sources and for creating the reference list. You may have heard about the Digital Objective Identifier called DOI. They have become standard for the International Standards Organization, but have not yet received universal support. Crossref is a registration agency for DOIs, so that citation can be linked across databases and disciplines. The sources included in the list of the references are only those that were cited in the paper. When you search an article in the PubMed, you can see the DOI in the abstract page here. If you want to look over the sixth APA style, you can access this website, which is supported by the Purdue University. You may complete the first draft of your review of the literature and feel a sense of accomplishment. Before you leave the review behind, a few tasks remain that will ensure the quality of your written review. Begin by rereading the review. One way to identify awkward sentences or disjointed paragraphs is to read the review aloud. Asking a fellow student or trusted colleague to read the review and provide constructive feedback. A critical final step is to compare the sources cited in the paper to the reference list. Downloading citations from a database directly into a reference management system and using the system's manuscript formatting functions reduce some errors, but do not eliminate all of them. You want your references to be accurate as a reflection of your attention to detail and quality of your work. As I wrap up this lesson, I would like to remind you one thing. The SNU Medical Library provides you many programs for literature review, such as PubMed and EndNote. As you may remember, you need to sign up the classes and complete for your successful literature review. Thank you very much.